All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to Canada Today Youth Edition right here on Muslim Network TV. This is your host, Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. And mashallah, today's topic is going to be quite a doozy. You can imagine that with Ramadan and particularly with this whole COVID-19 situation, stress is in the air. That's the buzzword of the day. You know what I mean? Like everyone is stressed, pulling their hair out. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all our families and friends. But I think we can all agree, we're all on the same page that life can be pretty stressful. And wouldn't it be nice if we could have less stress? I think if we had less stress, I think life would be that much better. And so, with us here today to kind of reduce the load and to make sure that we're all gonna be coasting through life, inshallah, in much better terms. We got two very special guests with us here today to kind of shed light on this topic. For starters, we have Brother Nabil Mansouri. Mashallah, he's 25 years old, born in Toronto, raised in Mississauga, and since grade 9, he's been heavily engaged with youth of all ages, ranging from 11 to 25 years old, and of various backgrounds. Mashallah, he's got quite an extensive reach on so many different things. He was involved with the high school student council called the Muslim and also the Muslim Student Association as well. So in high school, translating that into university with the Muslim MSAs. If you're a part of MSAs, you know what it's all about. Youth camps and a bunch of other different contexts. Mashallah, he loves working with youth, co-creating solutions with them, relating to them. And mashallah, he recently got his Master's of Science in Global Health from McMaster and also has a Bachelor of Medical Science from Western University. MashaAllah. Brother Nabil, I got to tell you, I always love our conversations. I'm really glad and excited to see what we can accomplish here today. And also with us here today, another amazing co-guest. MashaAllah, Dr. Sadaf Sheikh. MashaAllah. She is quite a sister because she wears many hats professionally. MashaAllah, she's an MD, a clinical researcher, a project management professional, an instructor at UFT, a professor at Humber College, and a family-oriented sister. MashaAllah, I gotta tell you, isn't that stressful? Like, I don't know how you do it, like juggling all these things. I don't know. I'm curious to know, subhanAllah, about this. But MashaAllah, she's also a published author in medical journals and that are very prestigious. MashaAllah, she's been published in the Journal of American College of Cardiology, International Diabetes Federation, and the Journal of European Society of Cardiology. And MashaAllah, one more key thing. There's so many things to unpack here, but another very crucial thing that she does as well as MashaAllah, she has this ASSIST program, the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. I'm sure you can imagine nowadays that mental health, as always, is at the forefront, but now just even further to help if people in need, and especially in those dire circumstances. MashaAllah, she's been trained to do that, and notably as well with Imam Dr. Hamid Slimi as well, mashallah, to be involved with that. So, mashallah, Dr. Sadaf, it's a true honor to have you on the show as well to kind of shed some light on this whole stress management during Ramadan, particularly. Now, let me continue on with you, Dr. Sadaf, if I can kindly. I know, mashallah, we kind of gave a big picture for the viewers, but maybe in your own words, I always like to share stories, and I think storytelling is a great way for people to get involved and to see in a nutshell, like, how did you get to where you are today? I know, mashallah, you're wearing a lot of different hats, but in particularly with this whole, diving into mental health and having your, out of all possible disciplines, you chose this one, and among others. Can you walk us through, like, how did you get to where you are today?
So the journey has been really good. Stressful, yes, and it's made me a little bit of a stronger person. But yeah, I had to define what I wanted to do, what I like to do, which is the most important thing, and then you pursue it, right? So the journey is never going to be easy. It's just how you manage it and how you handle it that will get you through to where you want to be. And you have to be passionate about what you do. I'm passionate about what I do. I like the whole mental health aspect, and taking the taboo and the stigma away from that conversation and having a conversation to appreciate human individuals and our weaknesses, and embellish our strengths and make us realize that we are capable of a lot. We don't have to stop. I'm still learning, and everybody should still be learning. That should never stop. So lots of difficult steps. You've got some exams, and then you've got your graduations, and then you want to do the next step. What do you want to do for a job, and all this good stuff. They all will take you through a journey, and I think that's the most important thing, is appreciate it and be grateful for what you have in your life to pursue further. I hope that answers your question in a nutshell.
Oh yeah, mashallah. So definitely, I'm sure there's a lot of things, stepping stones along the way, but I guess the biggest takeaway is that you love what you're doing. This is something you relish, and it really juices you up. Mashallah, wonderful to hear. Let me take it to you, brother Nabil. I mean, when it comes to working with youth, sometimes some people, they're like, you know what, these youngsters, these guys don't know what they're doing. I'd rather just stay far away, and that's that. But no, instead you decide to say, you know what, I love to get involved with the youth and have that mentorship aspect to it. Why? What's up? What's your story behind getting so involved with the youth? It's like from MSAs to where you are now. Talk to us.
Right. So simply put, growing up, I didn't really have a lot of mentors in terms of my professional development. Growing up, both my parents are, alhamdulillah, immigrants, and they gave me everything I could ever ask for in terms of my spiritual and personal development. But when it came time to knowing what to do with high school, the course selections, career selections, career choices, and oh my gosh, university was just was just another storybook on its own. What program do I choose? Where do I go? What can I do after? And I didn't have anybody else to rely on except my friends and mentors that I met along the way. And it comes back to that same principle in Islam, right? If someone gives you benefit and helps you out, you can only do so much, and you can only give back to others, right? And it's that principle and value that's been instilled in me. And so since I've had so many people in my life, so many mentors I could count on, it only makes sense that I can give back. And the feeling that I have received when I was being mentored, I love giving that same feeling back to others, and making sure that the youth nowadays have resources, advice, mentorship, wisdom, things that I didn't have growing up, or at least I couldn't find growing up. And really, it's fun. It's engaging to work with them, right? They're so creative. It brings your creativity out. They're so naive. They're so innocent. They really want to learn. They want to grow. They ask a lot of questions. They're curious. It's so fun working with them. So fun. Makes you feel like you're a kid all over again. So I love that feeling.
Mashallah, man, that's really cool. Like, you want to pay it forward, and sometimes, how do I say it? Like, you don't know. It's not like if you don't know what you have until you lose it, but you really understand the feeling of it when you don't have it versus when you do. And mashallah, it's amazing. Like that, you coming at it from that sort of angle, coming from a need, but then you pass it forward. Amazing stuff. Let me continue with you, Brother Nabil, because this whole topic of stress management could be on everyone's heads and on everyone's minds. Can you give an example from what you've seen so far? Like, let's maybe be very specific in talking about with COVID and with Ramadan in particular. Are there any patterns that you've noticed? Any sort of common sources of stress that you found? And we can unpack the conversation a little bit more from there. What would you say are some common sources of stress these days?
So there's a few, but I think number one that I always constantly get when I talk to a lot of youth that I speak to is the fact that now home, so the stress from family tensions and just living with family. Now this can't be applied to everyone, because a lot of COVID has actually brought a lot of families together. But on the other hand, it's actually kind of caused a lot of friction and tension, namely because there have been youth and people that I know who looked at going to university or college, or even day school, right, high school, elementary school, as like their escape, their getaway from home, and their time to socialize, their time to be themselves. And then when they come home, then they're brought on with all these sociocultural expectations and stuff and tensions that are always there. And now that social life has just been taken away from them. School has been taken away from them, at least in person. they're left with, working with their parents and being at home and trying to cope with that. And that has been one of many issues related to their mental strain and mental health.
Interesting. So it's almost, would this be a fair analogy? It's almost like nowadays families are like ping pong balls that are constantly battering one another when you're at home, as opposed to, hey, okay, I'm out, and then after that, see you for a couple of hours, and then after that, come back home. Now it's just there's this friction and tension. Interesting. So that's one way to look at it. Dr. Sadaf, I take it to you, please. What are some things that you've noticed? What are some common sources of stress, particularly nowadays with this whole pandemic that's hovering around?
I think, and I'll tell you from just today, I was talking to someone I was counseling, and the question was, when is this going to end? And that's a tough question, because sometimes when you have a goal or a destination, and this is going to take you this long to get there, you kind of ramp up the energy to say, okay, I just got to get this far and then we're done, right? With COVID-19, it doesn't seem to be ending. Okay. And then people are really struggling because they're figuring out, how am I going to navigate through all of these things, which are, number one, boring, stressful, socially isolated. And then they're seeing family members pass. I don't know about both of your experiences, but I know a lot of family and family members and friends and their acquaintances that have passed because COVID has happened. And so now we've got the trauma of loss, but you can't visit. You can't do any of those things that we normally would do in our cultural, religious capacity to go and console somebody. So I think that estrangement is very difficult for people, especially when there's loss involved at such a grand level. And I do, I've got kids and stuff, and they are also going through this where they, miss going to school, and they miss their friends, and they get bored at home, sitting at home, and now you can't go to grocery shop, or you can't go to the mall, and it's just a lot of no's. Right. But then there's no end to the no-no-nos. And I think that's what's frustrating for a lot of people, even the adults. It's very frustrating for them to not know when this cap is going to be lifted and things are going to go back to what we deem as normal. Right. So similar to what Brother Nabil was saying. But yes, it's just there's no end. And I think that's what causes a lot of people a lot of stress.
I see. So Paula, as reiterated back in the beginning, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help all the families, the affected, friends and families that have been hit by COVID-19. I know as well, like there are people in my inner circle that also have been. So I think at one point or another, everybody has had they have a story to tell, and maybe even like incurred some loss because of this. So I hear you. And as well, the fact that there's no end in sight. There's no light at the end of seemingly there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's could be the start of a disastrous decade, or it could be the start of some amazing new thing. I hear you loud and clear, Spala. So that's one thing. Is there anything else so aside from the fact that there's no end in sight, or Brother Nabil mentioning about the family tensions, if we had to like pinpoint as well other areas, maybe just so that way we can see what's going on, like where's this, I don't want to say the hot spot, but where are the real triggers here that are really causing? Is it a lack of a game plan? Is it like if we were to say what would you say, like what would be cat, and they say, you know what, yeah, this is what's really, if I fix this, everything will be a little bit better, at least. If we fill in that blank, is there anything else that comes to mind?
To be honest with you, I think there's a lot of things, and the key thing is people have not understood their underlying mental health status. I think that's what it is. And everybody has stresses and everybody has coping mechanisms, but when there's a lot of stress that's beyond your means of management, that's when things break down. And I think COVID-19 has highlighted that, we all can suffer from mental health concerns. Why? Especially because of different dynamics that are happening and different, phases that we're going through, where there's lockdown and there's an opening for a little bit, and then there's a lockdown, and it's constantly flipping back and forth. There's no consistency. I think that a lot of people are realizing that there are mental health issues that they do harbor, but they're holding on to very well because they've had coping mechanisms that worked, and now no longer do those coping mechanisms work. So I think that for me, that understanding is very clear, and which is why I jumped at this opportunity to talk about this, because I think our communities need to embrace the fact that their mental health concerns do exist, and we can work with them, and we can prevent them, and we can manage them. But I think with COVID-19, what has happened, and I think one of the triggers, and Brother Nabil, you can definitely fill in if there's some difference between what I'm saying with what your experience is, but I think that the mental health factor is coming to the top because we've put it away for so long, and now it's no longer being able to be bottled up as well.
Yeah, feel free, Brother Nabil, take it away. Is there anything like?
Yeah, so 100%. Dr. Sadaf really, hit the nail on the head there. Everything she said about people not really understanding their threshold, and if you don't understand your threshold, you don't know how to cope, and you don't know what you can tolerate. You don't know what you can expect in the future as well, right? So that's been number one. I agree with her fully on that. I think another, number two, a smaller point, I guess, is just the lack of community. And I'm just tying this back into our title of today, stress management in Ramadan. Ramadan, you think of going to the masjid every day and helping out with volunteering every day, really doing a lot of khidmat work and, like I said, volunteer work. That's all been closed off, right? And a lot of youth that I've been speaking with, especially from the youth programs that I've been running, they all asked me like 3-4 months ago, Brother Nabil, can you ask Dr. Slimi if we can go to Save the Haji Center? Can we help volunteer? Can we do some cooking? I miss handing out plates to everybody in iftar and suhoor. I miss doing this. I miss doing that. And I'm like, we can't. We just don't have the limits. And they don't. They're not asking this for their volunteer high school hours or anything. They just literally genuinely want to go back and see people again. They want to go back and see their second family, if you want to say. And that's just been completely blocked off. So the spirituality aspect has been kind of really weakening as well. And as Muslims, spirituality is closely linked to mental health, right? For me personally, I draw a lot of my mental health tolerance and how much I can hold from my spirituality and the Quran and the Sunnah and the past. And the masjid is a really close connection to that, right? So when you're seeing stuff virtually online through khutbahs and virtual halakas, you're listening to it, but it's obviously not the same.
Yeah, so Paul, I'm glad that you touched on that. That was gonna lead me to the next point. Is it the physical presence that makes all the difference, or is it? Okay, for volunteering, it makes sense. I'm sure at some point, for those of you who volunteered before at your local masajid, the feeling of giving and hanging out and the inside jokes and all of that. All that, it becomes fond memories. But nowadays with virtual, you can create new kind of memories, but it's not like one-to-one, but what's the essence of the thing that's really missing? Is it so the community, is there someone to lean on, someone to talk to, having that face-to-face conversation? What would you say?
I just think like being virtual, it feels very robotic now. Keep in mind that everything is virtual, right? So you have to put yourself into the mind and shoes of these youth and kids nowadays. They're doing school every single day on Zoom, online. Everything whatever career workshops they want to do is online. Job interviews online. Work, if you're working, it's online. Everything is online. It's just so robotic. So you become so desensitized to what it really feels like to be in person now, and you really want that. You really want more of that, right? And I think being in person, whether you're just sitting in a halaqah, Friday night halaqah, it's the surrounding, it's the atmosphere. SubhanAllah, when Juma was open back before the recent restrictions, it felt so different. It felt so different when I was watching Juma on my laptop. I was distracted here and there. I can hear background noises. You're obviously in your room or office, wherever you are. But when you're at the masjid, you have nothing else to do but to concentrate on the words coming out of the khatib's mouth, and you're really being immersed in that entire atmosphere, and it's different. So now you bring that in with the youth and kids volunteering with, if I don't know, cooking dinner for iftar, and you're like talking to people, you're collaborating, you're handing out plates. You're learning life skills on the go when you're not even realizing you're learning actual life skills, but you're learning that. It's just so immersive, and that's what people miss, really.
I hear you, mashallah, man. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us all, and hopefully we can reunite one day, and for all, like for us to have that feeling once again. I'll take it to you, Dr. Sadaf, for this. Let's shift gears for a moment here for this conversation now. When it comes to stress management, so we've identified a number of different things when it comes to everybody has their own reasons, their own stories, but it's always great, I think, to articulate it, because maybe people can't put a finger on it, but then they realize, whoa, maybe it is those underlying mental health tolerances, or maybe it is the fact that I'm missing my family and friends there. Maybe it is like that connection with the community is what I'm missing. Dr. Sadaf, if I can ask you, keeping people anonymous, are there any stories that you can share of some cases that you've seen, maybe that you've dealt with firsthand, secondhand, what have you, where you really see like how stress can really alter someone's life? It could be for the better or for the worse, but just to kind of paint a picture, to really highlight and showcase for our viewers here that, if left unchecked, if we don't properly manage our stress, the results may not be as desired. Do you have anything in mind, or that you'd be open to sharing?
Sure, I'll share you with you two basic stories. One is what we find as a norm, and I think Brother Nabil also mentioned a little bit about family friction, and then mental health on a broader level. And then the second story is going to be talking more about what happens when, really the parameters of prevention are not there, recognition are not there, what happens with individuals who have mental health, and what degree that mental health can actually go to. So the first story is I get a lot of concerns from parents that their children are just constantly on devices, and now there is, because they're in the midst of just family, and that's all they know, all they have right now, there are challenges and there's a lot of friction, and then there is a whole idea of misbehaving, and they're not listening, and there is a lot of irritation there, okay, because everybody's at home all day long. So there is a lot of that I've noticed. So we've had a story where there was a son who was misbehaving with the parents, but also with the siblings, and it was just it was a very difficult situation to manage, because we had to get to his level, to the son's level, to understand what was it that was irritating him. And the bottom line was, he didn't have the life that he used to have, and it's that change that has made him become irritable, because he doesn't have control over how to go back to what he knows, what was he comfortable with, and the closeness with his friends. It was all basically taken away from him as he knew it. So now there's a learning curve there. How do I now figure out how life should look like in this situation? So we had those situations that I've dealt with, and to the point where I've had situations where there's, youth that are having, suicidal ideation, because they find that they're very helpless and they are not having any hope, or more so, not any support from their family members, because they are going through a mental health crisis, or they have had, depression that was masked. Or depression that wasn't addressed, or they were told, you're not supposed to feel like this, or you you're supposed to pray more, and that will be the answer to, you becoming better. So I've had those situations. So I have, situations where there are family issues that are happening, right? On a individual level, relationship wise. And then there is another level, which is a personal level, where things are crumbling, but then there's no support around that individual. And now they're feeling it more because they're at home, or they have they're not going to work, and they're not seeing their friends, or they're not going to their, barber or salon where they can talk to each other very candidly about what their life looks like. So I've had multiple, counseling sessions based on all these things, where I've had to redirect individuals to the appropriate specialists or subject matter experts so that they could get further help. But we're seeing those types of differences where they could be small, like irritable differences within family members, and then broad ones that all the way lead to really unraveling the mental illness that's there. And now it's just surfacing really strong, and now they don't know how to manage it, and it's overwhelming. And so they're struggling with thoughts of suicide, right? So with the assist program, we that's what we do. We do suicide prevention. And when we find these cues of this is something that's going to be going wrong, or there is a chance that this is going to be taking that route of where the person is thinking about ending their life, then we take that person and find them full amounts of supports in every dimension that you can think of, so that they can get over this thought process, or this time period where they're feeling helpless. And I think in our religion, the most amazing thing is we always should have hope, right? And so I find that, and I'm going to chime in about this time of Ramadan. We as a community, when we come together and we're opening our fasts together, and we are praying together, we're having a little bit of a social time together, where we're talking to each other about our concerns and our problems. And the embraces that we normally use to let each other know that we're there for them, they're all missing. So that whole part of Ramadan, where we take that special time out and we do just sort of finding our hope, that part of that time has been taken away, because now we're still back into our own homes, and it's like day as normal, right? So the Ramadan is not feeling as Ramadan should be feeling. But I have a thing here. I mean, I don't want it to all be very dismal. There's what I appreciated in many of the imams' talks that I've heard so far. There's opportunity here. Okay, nothing is so dark. Yes, there's Ramadan is in a different setting, in a different place, but it should urge you to be more creative about what you want to do and your goals of what you should accomplish. We have more time, believe it or not, because now we're not, in traffic going to work and coming back from work, or going to the masajid and then having a lot of, traffic there and coming home. So if you think about all those things, they're now taken away. So guess what? We have more time to devote to prayer and to recitation of the Quran, to learn, the translation of what we're reciting or what we're experiencing. And I think that is an opportunity, and we shouldn't get, so bogged down with all the differences in COVID-19 and everything's like, terrible. There's always hope. Is how you want to look at that picture. It's like usually the thought process is your glass half empty or half full, but at the end of the day, we can make it into an opportunity, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that should be what's highlighted. And that's where the stress management should kind of focus on, to sort of say, okay, well, I'm in a situation and it's stressful. How do I manage this stress, and have full hopes that, if you're hopeful, Allah will help you. You will find a way. And there's multiple things you can do to manage stress during Ramadan, especially because the timings are such that we are going to sleep a little bit later. We're waking up really early. So sleep is compromised a little bit. We are not eating, throughout the day, and so obviously there's a stress on our bodies. which is saying, okay, well, you need this energy, right? And then, we do have these challenges. So we have to kind of figure out, okay, how do I manage that stress, right? And as beautifully as it can be stated, Ramadan is supposed to be, reawakening a revival of the spirit and the hope and the, futuristic thought processes of where your life is going to go. What are your good goals? What are you going to keep with you? What are you going to discard away as a bad habit? All those types of things are basically being rejuvenated here or reintroduced here. And it's making us a better person. We just have now, I think, more time to devote to this time of revival and acceptance and hopefulness. I think we're missing that piece that people are, when we say stress, we always say bad things. It's not necessarily the truth.
I see, mashallah. Don't worry, we're gonna. I'm gonna hold you to that. We're gonna, like, in terms of like the bright side, the good stuff. We're gonna get there. That's good. That's the direction we're heading. So we're gonna hold on to that. But I'm gonna take it to you, brother Nabil. Do you happen to have any stories of stress? Just again, so Masha, Dr. Sadaf was highlighting those two spheres, right? We have the one sphere of the irritability of the son, who was really. I like how you kind of uncovered or unearthed that it was a lack of control that was the real root of it. Like it's like a different world. I don't know how to cope with it. And then, the other side of this where it can get, really, if it's left completely unchecked. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to safeguard ourselves and to really equip ourselves with the right way of managing it. You can go down a darker path. So if I take it to you, Brother Nabil, are there any stories that come to mind that you've seen that really show that maybe stress can get out of hand, or something that you can point towards and say, oh boy, if we don't, check ourselves, we could wreck ourselves? Like, what would you say is a story that comes to mind?
Well, I don't have one particular story. I think this is just an amalgamation of a bunch of themes and stories from what I've been hearing so far. And like Dr. Sadaf said, it comes down to just the heightened irritability that comes with one, now everybody being in the same household and having no social life and being able to go away and to school or work or whatever. And then number two, you add that into with Ramadan, when we're running on low glucose, especially like 12 p.m. and your brain's really starting to shut off. Really shuts off near the evening time, and you're like, okay, I have to still work. I have to still, if you cook, you have to cook. You have to deal with kids, with spouses, etc. So I think it's just the irritability aspect of people saying things, and I think Dr. Salaf alluded to this a little bit as well, where she said, like, these problems didn't just arise now, right? They were already here. They were already in these like households and stuff. It's just that COVID kind of exposed it, kind of like our health system, right? How COVID exposed the healthcare system now, and how everybody's trying to like figure out ways to rebuild it. It's the same idea with households, I think. Stress and tension was there, ill thoughts, negative feelings. They were always there. It's just that people found ways to escape through school or whatever. And so, yeah, I don't really have particular stories, but I think it's just more of people saying things that they shouldn't, being irritable, regretting things. And I think that comes because of a culmination of what we've been saying so far, of many people in the family not going out to seek help, not realizing that they even need help. And so Ramadan kind of exposes that a little bit more than it usually does.
I see.
So again, on the negative aspect, but yeah.
Yeah, so it reiterates the whole idea, that whole concept. I hear you. But I'm going to stick with you, Brother Nabil. Now here comes the high point of this program, where we're going to be talking about solutions. What's the whole point of painting this bleak picture? And it's all doom and gloom, and that's it. Like, listen, we just roll it. That's what our dean teaches us. Just throw your hands up in the air and that's it. Throw in the towel. That's it. Like that's how life is, and there's nothing you can possibly do. No, man. For every problem, there's a solution, right? And I'm sure, like, for every lock, there's a key. So talk to us, Brother Nabil. I mean, maybe we can't completely solve the problem. Maybe we can't completely change the situation, but I'm sure there's some things that we could do. What would you say, Brother Nabil, in your experience that you found to be useful tools to help with stress management?
Well, one thing that I work on myself and I tell others is to, if you have any tensions or any clashes with people in your household or in your social network, whatever, instead of putting the finger towards them first and telling them you need help, if something's wrong with you or whatever, I do the same thing. I look to myself first and I say, how can I be better? Because, whenever you're in a tension or in a clash, there always needs to be that one person that starts to keep their mouth shut, diffuse the situation, is the water to the fire, right? And so if that person that you're tend to clash with isn't going to be that person's going to be calm, then at least you can do that. You can take that part and working on your own coping mechanisms and your own stress relief, stress management. And so some things that I tell people is like, really, and it takes a lot of practice, to be honest, because this stuff, it comes from a lot of bad habits, right? And has built up over time. So it takes time to work on this, but you have to always, and it's a mental game, you have to think to yourself before you say something, is this really worth saying? Like, is this going to do anything? Am I going to cause some other problem if I say this sentence or that sentence? If I do this action or that action, is it really worth it? If not, just let it go. Like, just learn to let it go. And one thing that I tell some youth that I mentor as well, and they're really visual learners. So what I tell them is like, open up an Excel spreadsheet, and in that spreadsheet, do like a tracker of how many days you've gone by without having bad manners with parents or saying things that you shouldn't have said. And I say, okay, from Monday to Tuesday, let's say we're in the third week of April, so week 1, April 19 to 25. Put like a green box beside, fill in a little green box for the days that you didn't say anything bad, that you didn't regret anything, that you didn't have guilty feelings or say anything that you didn't really mean. And if you do slip up, then make it a red. And then you keep doing that and you're going to eventually see that, inshallah, there's going to be more greens than red. And, it's like visual, it's a visual tool to help you understand that you are capable of getting out of your bad habits. You're capable of coping with your demons. You're capable of coping with stress, and it just helps you learn. So I don't know if that's a tool that people want to take on, but it's been helping me and helping some other friends of mine. So yeah.
Whatever floats your boat, mashallah. Hey, if it works for you, like that's the key. I want to like just unpack a couple of quick things, mashallah, because like one of the things that you mentioned was let it go, like pick your battles. And when you said let it go, I think there's a popular song. I think does the movie Frozen like come to mind? And the only reason I'm bringing this up, I'll tell you why I'm bringing this up, because not only was that song like just on a musical level, oh man, constantly playing over and over again the radio back in the day when it was at its height of popularity. But one of the interesting things about Let It Go that I've read in so many different instances, if you read through the comment section, you read articles, a lot of people were saying like how liberating they felt. Like they felt like it was such a liberating thing, and that, just let it go. Like you don't have to fill up your mental capacity with things that are in the past. You have the future, you got the present right here, just, whatever happened, and you just push forward. So as soon as you said let it go, I was like, okay, that's one interesting concept. Like, you got to learn to pick your battles. Is it really worth holding on to something if it's not going to benefit you in the long run? It's like carrying a bunch of luggage without a destination in mind. SubhanAllah, so that's one thing. And the other thing that you mentioned, the blame game, right? Like, people were pointing fingers left and right, and you have to kind of train yourself not to constantly ask, hey, it's your fault. Why don't you ask the question or reframe it to say, like, where was I, in the wrong, or what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Or where is that? And I think you'd find that more productive. Looks like you want to say something, Brother Nabil. And again, Dr. Sharaf, I'll give the floor to you because, mashallah, this is your area of expertise. But go for it, Brother Nabil. Yeah.
Just 30 seconds more. One extra really good coping mechanism that I found is when I tell people is, when I tell them to, let things go, they're like, but I can't. I need to rant it out. I need to say it. You can. That's true. You can't bottle it up, right? Or else eventually, if you don't say it today, you're going to say it next week or another time. So another coping mechanism is, if you don't have a counselor at hand, or if you're not ready to speak to a counselor yet and open up to one yet, just literally go on your phone, on your laptop notepad, or on paper, and just type, just rant it out. Just rant it out. Whatever comes to your mind, take it out on paper, on your phone, or whatever. Voice record it if you want. If you want to speak it out, just voice record it. And then if you want to delete it right after. It's just for the sake of getting things out of your head, and really it feels good too, because you actually feel a lot lighter. You don't feel like hot and like steamy and furious. You actually feel like you've let it out without telling it to the person that you wanted to tell it to, right? So it's another safe way to kind of to help you cope.
Very interesting. Yeah. So it's like an outlet and like writing it down on paper. I like the idea of the voice recording. I mean, if people are more verbal, they have to verbalize their thoughts. There's that component. They prefer more. Maybe some people might even want to draw out their situations, I presume. Like, so, I mean, everybody has their own preference. So that's cool. But okay, now let's take it to the one and only. So, Masha, Dr. Sadaf, like this is your bread and butter, so to speak. I mean, Masha, I'm sure you've seen and you've experienced, and there's so many things I'm sure you could offer. What would you say if you could, enlighten us with some of the techniques or things of that nature that would be really useful tools to help with stress management, especially during COVID-19 and given this whole circumstance and the situation? Please walk us through or share with us what are some things that you found to be tremendously beneficial and helpful.
Okay, so the two words that I wanted to mention to you are self-care. And I think that is something which I very much so advocate, because I think that self-care embodies a few different things. It allows you to have an identity, which I think there's a lot of crises with identity nowadays, because people don't know who they are. They try to fit in into different settings and they don't fit in, and they try harder, and then things go into, basically a spiral down. So self-care, is basically just that. You have to take care of yourself, which means get to know yourself, have a relationship with yourself, know who you are, what you like, what, simple as, what career choice would you like to do, right? And be able to, identify your weaknesses. We all have them, right? But identify them and then work on them. Okay. When you work on these weaknesses is when you're adding to your strengths. So appreciating the weaknesses, so that for the purpose of strengthening them, and then to actually really appreciate what the strengths are, and then using those strengths to further do good with them, right? So if you are a strong academic, maybe the next step is tutor somebody or mentor somebody, right? Or help them, realize their potential, be a coach, So these types of things, I think, are things we have to focus on. So self-care is very important. Know what you like, what you don't like. Don't let peer pressure or anybody tell you this is what you should like. Okay. And this is how you're supposed to do this, in terms of career and all these things. We're going to have those conversations, right? Because families will tell you, this is what your career choice should look like. The understanding is, you have to do what you like, which is, what I started off with. I enjoy what I do, and therefore it helps me, wake up in the morning and we're getting and going. It allows me to expand my horizon. Like, so when I'm doing this show here, just like Brother Nabil, we've expanded our horizon. We're like, okay, we are going to now give back in whichever way possible, whether it's with time, whether it's with our knowledge, whether it's by experience, anything. So I think that is crucial. So self-care is something that you do for yourself. You have to identify who you are, have a relationship with yourself, get to know yourself, identify your weaknesses and your strengths, and make them, unify as a complete holistic individual that you are. The moment where you clash with, you are this person, but you cannot be this person, in terms of, majority of it is usually careers. Okay. So, parents are going to say, you have to be this and this and this and this, and the child does not want to be that. There has to be a healthy conversation about why and this and that. And it shouldn't be a one-way stream. So the child has to be able to realize, or the youth has to be able to realize, that they should have an open conversation with their parents, and the parents have to realize that they're living in a situation or in a country where this is okay, and it is acceptable. So they also have to kind of make the efforts to intertwine with their kids and try to appreciate where they're coming from. And again, all of those things will revolve around self-care, because if you don't know what you're doing, then you're going to be pushed into doing something that you don't like, and then a lot of other different things happen. And even just for parents, self-care is a huge thing. You have to take care of yourself. And now that we've been given an opportunity again in COVID, where we do have more time, believe it or not, because your commuting is gone, you still can take out 10-15 minutes that you didn't have before, because you were in a car, or you were in a bus, or you were in a train. Now you can take those 10-15 minutes out and give it to yourself. Whether it is that you enjoy reading a book, go read a book. Whether it is to go take a nice bath, go take a bath. Whether it's to listen to music or khutbahs or recitations, it's all up to you. You have to decide what works well for you. And the reason why we do self-care is to become resilient and to manage our stresses. We may have, and everybody has, a very stressful time usually day by day. People have stresses. We can't get away from them, whether they're financial, whether they're academic, whether they are personal. They're there. You can't run away from them. So what we have to do is we have to address them in such a way where we are accepting the fact that these are stresses, but then what are we doing? And so what are we doing to make sure that we become resilient and we go the next day is we do self-care. And enjoy your life. Life is a very beautiful thing. Not a lot of people have what we have, and gratitude should be on the very top of our list. And when you do self-care, you will find it within you to find those moments of gratitude and say Alhamdulillah more often than not. So I think that's where I would like to put in. Self-care is very important. I do self-care almost every day, but I will not skip it for more than 2 days. So if I don't do it consecutively, I will do it every other day, because times are sometimes very busy, but I will not skip out on that. And that could look like getting in more sleep, waking up a little bit, later in the day, or, going for a jog, or just going to do, some writing or talking to somebody. Whatever it looks like to you, just do your self-care so that it makes you resilient.
MashaAllah, those two words, we can use them and ingrain them, write them in gold. Self-care, that's the key to all this. MashaAllah. I hate to say this, but I always have to say it. All good things must come to an end. Man, it was a spectacular conversation with you both, but I would be remiss if we didn't give you both an opportunity to share one final gem of wisdom for our viewers here today. If I ask Brother Nabil, really, I'll take it to you. Let's say there's a brother who's watching this who wants to pull his hair out, and he's all over the map, and he doesn't know how to manage himself and how to manage his stress. What would be your advice to him to make sure that he gets his head on straight and that things are gonna be better?
It'd be the same advice I would give to my younger self, right? Which is to relax, chill. You're stronger than you actually realize, and you have more potential, you have more tolerance, you have more resilience than you actually know. You just don't know it yet. And how do you discover that? Everything that Dr. Sadaf said, right? Self-care, seeking help. But it's that first step of just relaxing, taking that step, that thought process before you want to say something, before you want to act on something, and realizing that you are a better person, that you have a better version of yourself every time.
Amazing stuff. MashaAllah. That's it. Just take it easy. Now I take it to you, Dr. Sadaf. There's a sister who's watching this, and she's on the fence. She's at her wit's end, and she's hanging on to life by a thread. And life isn't going the way she expects, especially with this pandemic that's hitting everything is just pulled underneath, just everything is just taken away. What advice would you have for her to effectively manage her stress during this Ramadan?
So first of all, hanging by a thread in our context means that there might be thoughts of suicide. So if you want me
Okay.
to address it in that way, that's a different conversation. So I would say for those individuals that are in that state, please call crisis line. Please speak to somebody. Reach out and get some help. We've got, availability of people who are counselors online, through phone. Please pick up a phone and call these crisis lines that are available to you 24/7, and they are there. Be patient with them. But they will answer your call, and they do help out quite a bit. If it's an emergency, please go to the nearest hospital or emergency room. Again, there's different parameters here, but please just make sure that you get the help urgently. Call 911 and see what they can direct you to if you are feeling unsafe and not able to take care of yourself. Now, if it's not in that state and you're just getting really stressed and you're overwhelmed and you don't know how to manage it, the best thing to do is really take a step back. Okay. Sometimes being involved in that situation head on is more the part that's causing overwhelming feelings. Step back, analyze what's going on, be that fly on the wall, okay, and really look at what's going on. And then what would you advise your best friend or your person that you love to help them out of this situation? Sometimes we're better at giving advice than following it or understanding or appreciating it. So be that person to be the fly on the wall, to kind of assess and say, okay, how do I step back and how do I analyze this? And then really, honestly speaking, the reason I'm saying this is because then you will find gratitude within that situation, because you'll be saying to yourself, oh, there is a solution. Alhamdulillah. So don't lose hope. Always be grateful. Do self-care. I know those are 3 things, but I think those are all very important. And never give up on your tie with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the one who will resolve all matters for you. So don't ever forget to go back to Him.
Amazing, amazing. Mashallah. Thank you so much, Dr. Sadaf. Thank you so much, Brother Nabil. Very fruitful conversation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it, and for those watching to really make the most out of this whole conversation, to really have that microscope or maybe have that lens and saying, maybe I do need that stress management, and that I could like take away at least one of the tools that was offered here today. Thank you both so much for your insights. It's much appreciated. I want to talk to the viewers for just one quick second here, please and thank you. Now, there's this phrase I want to share with you all to conclude and put a bow tie to all of this. It goes a little something like this. Tough times create strong people. Strong people create easy times. Easy times create weak people, and weak people create tough times. So if we were to use that formula as some sort of guide, which time do you think we're in? We're in the tough times, but just like, diamonds are made in the rough, or that you have to sharpen your skill set and you just got to melt that iron to really make it work and everything. Mashallah, this is where all the all-stars are born. As they say, it's in the darkest of nights that the stars shine most brilliantly. So if you and I learn to manage our stress effectively, we can get through this. It's a guaranteed. It's a guarantee, inshallah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a guarantee that we can get through this whole pandemic situation, especially during Ramadan, where miracles can happen. And so with that, as always, we thank you so much for tuning in. This is your brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan for Canada Today Youth Edition. And feel free to stay tuned as always, and stay strong, stay safe, and stay proud to be Muslims. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.